If you can relate to hating your own beats, finding it really difficult to finish projects because you end up hating your own beats, and just generally not releasing anything because you hate your own beats, hopefully these four things can help. Now, this is a crisis which I have definitely experienced in the past, and up until recently had been experiencing it again. It's this kind of feeling that your beats aren't good enough. So in this video, what I've done is I've collected four different things which I've started doing, which have made it much more productive, and also probably the main thing as well, that it's made it way more fun. So let's get straight into this one. The first point. Now, this is something that I used to do all the time when I was making beats, and that is to compare myself to other beat makers. This is a really unhealthy trap to fall into, I think, and it definitely stunts your creativity. It stunts your productivity. I really do think it's a bad situation to be in mentally when you're doing this. And a lot of the times I've started making a beat, drifted off, started trying to listen to some lo-fi, and then I've come back to my beat and just convinced myself that it's not even worth finishing. So I don't know if this is something that's just really specific to me, but what I used to do is I'd start making a beat, and then I'd probably start struggling a little bit with either my drum selection or my mixing, and what I'd do is I'd go and listen to some lo-fi or some of my favorite artists to try and get some inspiration, and to try and listen to what they do with their beats and kind of mimic it in a way. Now, you know, you are told quite a lot, mimic the people that you really love listening to, or mimic the people that you aspire to be, and eventually you will become better and better at making beats. I do agree with that to a certain extent, but then I think there is a kind of toxic side to it where you can convince yourself that you're no good at making beats and that there's no point in doing it at all. Now, that is something I've definitely done a lot in the past. I've trashed a lot of projects because I've just convinced myself that they're not good enough, because while I've been making those beats, I've been listening to other artists that are obviously going to be better at making beats than me because they're world renowned for that specific skill set. So it really is a pointless task to me. I think it's completely pointless now, just comparing myself to other people. So I really try and avoid this when I'm making beats. I tend to just try and stay in my own head, keep following the path that I want to follow, and come out the other side having made an entire beat or a batch of beats. That has something that's really helped me with my productivity. I've stopped doing that and comparing myself to other people, and as a result, I've noticed that I've started to be able to make more beats and have more fun doing it. Okay, the second point, and I think this is very important as well, this is something that I think has helped me a lot, and I've actually surprised myself quite a few times in the past with this as well. This is to do with keeping hold of your old beats and also giving yourself space away from your beats when you've been working on them. So for example, if you've been making a beat, it can get to the point where it seems to become more of a chore than fun, and you start to hate it after a while because you're just trying so hard to make a sound or make a specific sound or make a beat and it's not working. So you get really frustrated and you end up hating that beat. So in those situations, all I'd say is either just try and finish as much as you can at that specific time, save it, and then leave it somewhere that you can access at a later date. Now, this is going to be really useful because when you come back to that beat, you'll either have a new sense of energy, you'll have a new sense of determination to finish it, or you might just have some other perspective that will help you to finish that particular beat. So for example, you may be in a better mood, you may be feeling slightly less critical about yourself, and you give yourself the space to be able to finish it and work on it and enjoy that process. And another thing as well is that sometimes you can make something, you think it sounds awful, but when you just come back to it at a later date, again, for those probably the similar reasons that I've just mentioned, you actually think it's not as bad as you originally thought. I've done this so many times, so I think it's really important. Two things here is to save your work. Even if you don't like it, just save every beat that you make and put it on a hard drive, save it somewhere, put it on a cloud storage, anywhere you can think of, and then give yourself the space away from it to get rid of all those negative feelings, come back to it and see if you like them after that. So yeah, that's really important, I think. If you're hating a beat when you're making it, try and finish it, give yourself some space away from it, and then come back to it. And I think a lot of the time your opinion may change. Now, I found so many beats on my hard drive over the past kind of 4 or 5 months, which I thought, at the time when I was creating them, just didn't like them at all, thought they were awful. And actually, I've found quite a few beats which I really like, including a whole project's worth of beats, which is about 10 or 11 beats, which I all thought, with a little bit of tweaking, they could actually be quite good beats. But at the time of making them, I just remember being really self-critical and not thinking they were any good. So hopefully those two things help you. If you don't do that, definitely get into those habits. I think having some space away and saving all your beats is a really good idea. Okay, point number 3, and again, I'm going to say this probably before every point, but this is also an incredibly important thing. Now, this is only something that I've realised over the past kind of couple of months, and it's because of a conversation that I had with my girlfriend. And I think we were talking about video creation or beat making, I can't really remember. What she said, which has really resonated with me, is that you can't expect to make things that sound perfect or look perfect. It's just a bit of a fallacy, really. So that is something that really resonated with me, because I think I do put a lot of pressure on myself to try and create a perfect product, like a perfect beat or a perfect video, which I release to you guys. But the reality is that this is a concept which doesn't actually exist at all. So if I'm making a beat and I've got this sample, what is going to be the perfect version of that beat? There's no such thing. It probably doesn't exist, that perfect sound. And when you're trying to chase something that doesn't exist, it can become very frustrating. You don't really know where you're going. You've got no direction because you don't know what you're trying to achieve. And because of that, it started to make me look inwards and think about myself and why am I trying to chase this thing that doesn't necessarily exist, this perfection. And I think a lot of it is down to just finding reasons to be unhappy with my own work. And that's, again, a really, really toxic kind of mindset to have about my own creativity. I think letting go of those excuses has been really important for me, and it's really helped me. I stopped trying to make this perfect sounding beat and just let the creative juices flow and allow myself the space to just finish a project and finish a beat, and allow myself the space to enjoy it as well and have fun creating it. I think those things are really important, especially when you're doing something creative that's a hobby, for example. You want to spend that time enjoying it. So that point has really helped me. If you're struggling with a similar thing, just forget about trying to make something perfect. It doesn't exist. It's something you're making up in your head. You need to just forget about it completely and just let yourself enjoy the process of making a beat instead. That has really helped me with beat making and in loads of other areas of my life, just hearing that one line from my girlfriend. So thank you very much to her, and hopefully me sharing this on is going to help some of you guys as well. Okay, this is the fourth and final point, and this kind of links into what I've just said, and that is just in general learning to be less critical of yourself. Now, this is something which I've really been trying to do over the past sort of year or so. It's really easy to fall into a trap of just criticizing everything that you create and convincing yourself that it's no good. And again, it's a really unhealthy habit to be in. And one thing that's really helped me with this as well, and stopping myself doing this to myself, is another thing that me and my girlfriend actually spoke about once, and that is thinking about the things that you say to yourself in your head, thinking to yourself, would I say this to someone else? Now, this is definitely something that's really helped with me, is that, you know, if you're making a beat and you're saying, this is awful, this is horrendous, this isn't as good as X or Y, why am I even bothering doing this? Would you actually sit there and say that to someone else that's making a beat? Would you sit there and be so critical of someone else and someone's work? I would hope that the answer to that is no, and therefore, why would you say it to yourself? And I think that's a really, really important thing to know. Being self-critical can be good to a certain point. It can drive you to become better at something, and I think there is definitely merit in being critical to a degree, but being overcritical is really dangerous, and I think that's the point that I got to. I was being so critical of myself that I was kind of stopping myself from being able to do anything at all, because I would never be able to live up to this mindset that I created in my head. So I'm slowly learning to let that go, and I'm definitely noticing over the past couple of weeks that when I'm making beats and sitting down, there will be points where I'm just saying to myself, this snare sounds awful, why am I using this snare, I need to find another snare, or just going through that process over and over again. I just have to take a breath and say, look, it doesn't matter, just use that snare. It sounds fine. There's nothing wrong with that snare. And as a result, like I've been saying throughout this whole video, this point has also made me enjoy beat making a lot more, and it's also made me more productive as well. Now, I haven't been releasing anything to the public, but in terms of making beats on my SP, which is just sat over here, I've definitely found that I'm getting much closer to the end of making a beat now compared to when I was 3 or 4 months ago. And I think they're mainly down to those 4 things that I've discussed. So I'm really happy with the progress that I'm making personally with beat making, and I hope that these 4 tips really help you guys to become better beat makers as well. So I'll just quickly recap. Don't compare yourself to other people, especially as you're making beats, which I used to do. Make beats, and if you're not enjoying it while you're making it, save it, leave it, go away, come back at a different date and listen to it again, and hopefully your perspective has changed, or you have some fresh energy to be able to make it better. Stop trying to achieve a perfect sound, because that concept just does not exist, and it's just yourself being critical on yourself. So try and forget that if you can, and just roll with it and just enjoy the process. And the last point, like we've just talked about, try and be less critical on yourself and just try and have some fun at the end of the day. It's a hobby for most of you guys. It's definitely a hobby for me. making beats. I love spending my time making beats. So I do want to enjoy that time, and I'm sure you guys do as well.